Now, if you came from the previous movie, as you can see, we created a multi-clip sequence, and our browser's a little bit confusing now, so let's clean it up and make it look a little bit more like the end of the Syncing Through Endpoints movie. I'm going to simply grab our multi-clip and drag it up to the top level of our browser, and then select Multi-Clip Sequence Folder and the multi-clip sequence and delete them by pressing the large delete key. The first thing we need to do before we can edit our multi-clip is to load it from the browser into our viewer, and you can do that simply by dragging it from the browser into the timeline, just like any other clip. If I scrub through this, I can actually see all the different angles simultaneously. Now, we only had 3 cameras to work with in this shoot, but you may have a situation where you're working with, say, 4 cameras, 9 cameras, 16 cameras. As a matter of fact, Final Cut Pro can sync together up to 128 different cameras. If I was working with more than 4 cameras, I can go ahead and switch my multi-clip view from 4 to 9, or I could even switch it to 16 up. Now, of course, we only have 3 clips available to us, but had I had 16, this entire window would have been full of our different angles. Let's go back and switch to multi-clip 4 up. The other thing that's important to be aware of is that there's actually 2 boxes surrounding this first clip, a light green one and a dark blue one. When you switch, you can choose to switch your video and your audio at the same time, or if needed, you can switch your video only or your audio only. Well, in this case, I really like the audio that's associated with camera 1, and I don't want to cut back and forth between 1, 2, and 3 because my presence would be different on all the different mics. So instead of switching video and audio, I'm going to go down and select video only. The next thing we need to do is we need to mark an endpoint, just like we would in any other clip, where we want this shot to start. So I'm going to wait till after the clap, and I'm going to scroll just far enough forward that I'm right there before I start talking. Now we're going to start with camera 1. Let's go ahead and mark an endpoint right before the speaker begins to talk. And I'm going to do that simply by pressing the I key to mark an endpoint. To load this clip from the viewer into the browser, you're going to simply click one of these buttons here, and we're going to do an overwrite edit. This will place the clip from the viewer into our timeline. Let's go ahead and hit Shift-Z so we can see the entire clip in our timeline. The next couple of steps are pretty important, and if you forget just one step, it's not going to work. You need to load the clip from the timeline back into the viewer, and you can do this simply by double-clicking it or selecting it and hitting the return key. You know that you've loaded a clip from the timeline because you'll actually see sprockets in the scrubber bar of the viewer. The next thing you need to do is go up to this drop-down box and switch it from Sync Off to Open. Now here's the tricky part that a lot of people make a mistake. They try to click on Here to Play. Because you've set it to Sync Open, you want to actually play it from the timeline, so I'm going to select the timeline and hit the spacebar to start playing. Once it starts playing, I'm going to click between the different images in my viewer, and that's actually going to make my cuts. So let's go ahead and select the timeline, press the Home key to take us to the beginning of the clip, and let's press the spacebar. Once the clip is playing, I can switch between camera angles by simply clicking on the camera that I want. So when the talent turns to camera 2, I can click on the upper right location, and when he turns back, I can click on the first location. Also note that whenever you click to switch cameras, not only does the camera angle switch in the canvas, but you can also see the blue bounding box move to the second camera. Notice that the green audio bounding box stays where it is. Now take a look at the timeline. You'll notice that markers have appeared, and as soon as I stop playback by hitting the spacebar, those markers have turned into edit points. There are 2 other ways that I can switch between cameras. The first would be with buttons. To do that, you need to go to the Tools menu, to the button bar selection, and you actually load something called the multi-clip button bar. You'll notice that when I select this, that the button bar is located in the browser, viewer, canvas, and timeline. All are modified. Now, if I hover my mouse over the individual buttons, I can see exactly what they're doing. In the case of the timeline, I have a choice between switching videos, and what this will do is if I click Switch Video Angle, in this case I'm on angle 1 and I want to switch to angle 3, it will change the angle of that video. If I go over to the next set of buttons, this is a cut option. When I click this button, not only will it switch the video angle, but it actually puts in an edit point and then switches the camera. We're going to go ahead and switch to camera angle 2. The third set of buttons not only allows me to switch my angle, but it also allows me to maintain any video filters that I may have placed on that clip. So if I had a color correction to give a look and feel to the shot, that would be maintained even though I switched angles. As you can see, performing a multicam edit while talking about multicam editing, you can make a lot of mistakes. So what we're going to do in the next movie is we're going to show you how you can move edit points and switch angles after the fact and get the exact edit that you want.